Hello and welcome to Sir David Simmons, his Life in Focus. I'm Sherwood McCaskey as always. Thanks for joining us. Sir David ended the last episode by listing two of his major overseas assignments which he undertook after his retirement from the post of Chief Justice of Barbados. In this episode, you will learn of two of those assignments and how Sir David's humanitarian approach won him the admiration of the Jamaican people.
Well, I have to say that the Jamaicans treated me so well. And if you speak to the Consul General, the Honorary Consul, Mr. Bailey, in Jamaica, Barbados' Honorary Consul, he will tell you that my going and doing that commission had a salutary effect in some respects. You remember there was a lot of aggro as a result of the Shanique Myrie case, and relations between Barbados and Jamaica were a little strained. When the time is finished with it, everything was back to normal. I was careful. Jamaica is a very volatile society. I was careful about how I conducted that inquiry. And it started on a note that surprised a lot of people. There was a man who was given a lot of trouble. He wanted a fellow called D'Aguilar, and he was making himself a nuisance, bombarding the Secretariat with letters on to do this and do that. He was giving orders, and he came in at the opening session and started to misbehave, and I called on him to behave himself. He wouldn't behave, and I appealed to him a couple of times, and then I looked at the police superintendent. I said, "Superintendent, put him out." And the superintendent was taken aback. I said, "Superintendent, you heard what I said. Put him out. Put him out. I never let him come back in either." And all the people went wild at it. How I was able to establish the good order early o'clock. And no, that went well. But it was beyond my wildest dreams. Tivoli Gardens is a special area. Tivoli was developed by Siaga, and it was his stronghold. But gradually, it became more and more of a garrison for him and the JLP. And Doris Coe took charge. And it was a serious, serious place. We got evidence, for example, during the inquiry, that you couldn't, that's called light and power. Light and power could not go in there and disconnect anybody's light. You would be killed, or the water people. So for years upon years, those people had free electricity and free water. The police, it's in evidence. Ellington, I think it was, Commissioner Ellington said he told you the last time that police went into Tivoli, you can't go in, you'll be killed. Vicious place. But, we received a lot of evidence pointing to extrajudicial killings on the part of the police. And we had, the evidence was something else, As this thing was happening, it was being recorded and filmed. So we were hearing and seeing all this gunfire and whatever. But then buildings were shot up. And I wanted a feel for the physical layout of Tivoli. And so when I said to the superintendent one day, I said, "Superintendent, I want to go into Tivoli." And I asked Professor Harriet and Justice Harris if they would go, and they said, if you're going, we're going. And then the superintendent said, in fact, I never forget, he saluted me and said, sir, as you say in your profession, with respect. I laughed. He said, with respect, I can't advise you to go down there. It's too dangerous. No, I said, but with respect, I will ask you to do what you have to do to make us secure. We are going. And you got to organize it. We're going under escort. He said, sir, give me until tomorrow morning and you think about this overnight. Next morning I came back and said, superintendent, no change, fix the date and time and put all the security in place. And they announced in the inquiry that the commission was going to go on a site visit to Tivoli. Oh, the press and everybody, what? And they're running me down. I said, no. When we go, you come and see. And we went. And when the court stopped, I got it, you see it, are you true? These people just went white. I mean, all the security around me were trying to, I said, leave them. These people are not going to harm me because they had placards all in favor, and not a nice things being said about me and so on. And we went and saw things and talked to people. And apparently that was very, very impactful on the whole society. It was for the first time that a true outsider was able to go into Tivoli. Yeah. And as I said, I was able to get the relations between Barbados and Jamaica restored to some semblance of normality. We made a number of recommendations, including providing compensation for people who had their properties damaged by the security forces and so on. And the government took that on board. It was humbling. I had never, quite frankly, in public life, experienced the kind of outpouring of love and respect that I was given by the Jamaican people of all classes, all races. Since perhaps 1976, it did touch me, I must tell you, deeply. And then to crown it, the Barbadian community in Jamaica put on a special lunch for me one Saturday at Port Royal and took over a couple of restaurants there and so on. And that was good. It felt good to have been appreciated for what you had done.
It is validating and meaningful to hear that you have done something helpful or that your work is indeed appreciated. Now, when you take into consideration the nature of the work done in Jamaica, the praises of the masses are an indication that Sir David did exceptionally well. Now on to the inquiry in Trinidad and Tobago. How does that compare in comparison to the one in Jamaica?
The inquiry in Trinidad was equally important, of course, because they had not had any official inquiry into what had happened in 1990 when Abu Bakr and the Muslims stormed the Red House. There was never any official. So it reminded me of what's happening in the States now with the January the 6th commission that the GOP voted against. But they never had an inquiry. And so I was asked within 6 weeks of retiring if I would come and chair this commission. At first, you were wondering where we were going to get the evidence. But a lot of evidence had been taken at the time and was in the form of affidavits. And many of the people who had deposed in those affidavits were still alive. And we were able to get them to come, refresh the memory, look back at your affidavit, and come and give the evidence. But you know, that went down well too. The Prime Minister was very complimentary when she laid the report in Parliament, 2 days or whenever. That's on the internet too, after we handed it in. But, you know, I said something on a program that David Ellis had me on Brass Tacks after I was finished Jamaica, to look back at the two reports and see if there were any lessons to be learned. I know that people in the Defense Force here have read the reports, and they have said to me that they've learned a lot. But I tell you one thing that I learned was that the politicians have to be careful about the extent to which they establish a relationship with the criminal element. It can do a lot of damage to weaken the societal fabric, to chip away at democracy, and ultimately to undermine good governance. So we wrote about, it's in the report, we wrote about how some of the gangs started in Trinidad and the power that was invested in some of these gang leaders who were, you know, just thugs. But they were supporters of a party, and projects were created, and they were given responsibility. And they were given responsibility for doling out the money. And ultimately they were going to keep more than they gave out. And warfare, war among the gangs. In Jamaica, with the garrison constituencies and so on, the same thing. That the politicians are reliant on thugs to maintain control and popularity in a particular area. Dangerous, dangerous. I hope that never comes to Barbados. That's all I can say.
You might recall that this series started on October the 27th, 2021. There was great significance in all of that. It is World Day for Audio and Visual Heritage. Think of those priceless pieces of footage of Barbados which you see on TV8 from time to time. Sir David, in his wisdom, repatriated all of that from London.
I remember that very well. We were doing, I had an estimates meeting. I was minister responsible for CBC as Home Affairs. And we had this estimates meeting. And Margaret Hope was the head of JS at the time. And there was this item, as I was going through the funds, I saw this item. I think it was $13,000. And the note said, for storage, where's the effect? For storage of film in England. So I said, Margaret, tell me something, what is this about? She says, well, you know, Minister, all of the GIS footage from the 50s and the 60s and so on is in England. I said, what? She said, yeah. I said, with who? A man called Mr. A.B. Muscat. I said, okay. And we've been paying this $13,000 every year to Mr. Muscat to keep our film in England. But that was stopped. leave it to me. I have to go to London shortly to negotiate a contract with for the post office. I'll go and see Mr. Muscat. Mr. Muscat's office was near Warren Street. The High Commission was just down the road, Tottenham Court Road. So I asked my brother, who was High Commissioner at the time, where was this thing? He said, man, you could walk it. It's up by Warren Street. And then he said, no, I can send you with the driver. So they took me up to Mr. Muscat. We made the appointment. I went and saw Mr. Muscat. And I said to him, well, I'm told that you have a lot of footage from the 50s and the 60s. He said, yeah, you want to see it? I said, no, I don't have time to see it. I take your word for it. I said, but I feel now that that should be back in Barbados. What I wish you to do is, when I get back, I'll have a letter written to you. But I wish you to quantify what it would cost for you to repatriate that to Barbados, or all the footage you have here to Barbados. And so I said, so done. And he sent down in a couple of weeks what I call foolish money, like, about $12,000 or something small. I said, to get all that back, well, that's paid. So we paid it, and we got the thing back. No. When I asked CBC to let us try and market this and do some programs, they told me it was impossible. I said, but you see, the importance of this is that people in, that was 1997 or whenever, a lot of young people in 1997 would not have known about the first housing area that was built at Clinkett's in St. Lucie, or those sorts of things, or even the visit of Princess Margaret around here, or when there were federal elections and so on in 50, all those things. And even Barbados playing against Australia, Everton Weeks making 132. That part of that was on film. And when in the same series, when Claremont, De Pisa, and Dennis Atkinson put up the world record of 347, there's a little bit of footage there done by Mr. Watkins. I said, no, but generations of Barbadians must know where we came from. So we brought it back. And we put out the word that we had all this thing. And I had a breakfast meeting at Sherburn and invited the business community to come and bid for sponsorship. And Cow wanted to do all. I said, no, you guys share it around. So we settled on sponsors, and Tony Cave did a wonderful job. He was then, he was a permanent secretary, but he had that wonderful voice. And he did the program. It was called How We Were. So there's a lot of stuff there now. And we sold some of the CDs, you call them DVDs? DVDs, yeah. We sold some of the DVDs. I don't know if they still do them, but as I said, that's part of our history. So I was very, very pleased to bring those things back from Mr. Muscat's offices in England and let our people see, as it were, where we had come from. I mean, you look at some of the stuff in the 50s. I see you all do it too on some of your programs in the promos and so on. Some of those trucks, the G4 something that I see loaded with cane. That is what Barbados was like in the 50s. That's what we were like in the 50s. And the donkey carts, but I don't think they're them about now. All those things are there, man. People must know about them.
I could not agree with you more, sir. Sir David has had a long association with the Faculty of Law of the CAFL campus of the University of the West Indies.
The Faculty of Law was inaugurated in October 1970. It was the region's response to a lot of academic writing and the realities of the legal system in the region, that we needed to train our own practitioners, if possible, train them in the nuances of the common law as it applied to the Caribbean. But it was time for us to stop the requirement of having to go to England and qualify at one of the Inns of Court and then come back if you wanted to be a barrister. So the heads of government took some decisions about having a faculty of law to teach the academic side of law, a number of core subjects, and then after you'd done your 3 years and you got your LLB, you would then be required to go to Trinidad or Jamaica, to Hugh Wooding or Norman Manley Law School, to do 2 years where you would learn about the practical side of the profession. So we wanted to start training up our people, and we knew that we had the quality personnel within the region to do it. And I came back home in June 1970, but I'd been lecturing in England before, so lecturing in law was not going to be a new experience for me. And I was invited by Professor Patchett and I think Professor Marshall to come to CAFL and work on a part-time basis, teaching a couple of courses, or doing tutorials certainly. So the first year I did tutorials in legal method and criminal law, and then subsequently I taught criminal law, taught private international law, taught company law. But in 1975, my practice had developed to the point where I was finding it more and more difficult to do the teaching and do the practice at the same time. And then there was, of course, the pull of politics. So I stopped teaching in 1975, but a number of very, very eminent Caribbean lawyers passed through my hands. President Adrian Saunders, who was president of the Caribbean Court of Justice, was born. And a number of DPPs all over the region and solicitors general. I don't recall myself teaching. There were two famous ones. Francis Alexis, Workhouse. I don't remember teaching. He was there in the first 3 years, you know, but I don't remember teaching him. And Dennis Morrison, who was the most recent president of the Jamaica Court of Appeal. I knew them, and they would talk to me, and I talked to them, but they weren't in my tutorials. A number of other people, can't remember all, a long list. So I tried well, I always had a regional focus and perspective, and trying to develop a West Indian law faculty would have been something that I really would have been I was very happy doing. So later on, when the heads asked me to see about setting up the Caribbean Court of Justice, that was just another extension of my regional work. In those days, we had probably more undergraduates doing the LLB from Trinidad and Jamaica than from Barbados. Had a good turnout, of course, but because of their size. Although we never had classes that were excessive. They were manageable. Not like when I went back. You know, after I retired in 2010, and Professor Andrew Burgess was appointed to the Court of Appeal, they wanted somebody to come back at the faculty and teach what they call Contract 2. And Professor Velma Newton begged me to come and help out. And I went and did it. I had to spend that summer preparing, reading a lot of stuff and catching up on things. But when I did my first lecture, it was in the medical sciences auditorium, I suppose you call it. And when I looked up, it's not like in my time where you probably had 50. There were 250 plus people in the Bahamas. So that for that Christmas, I had to mark, I think there were 258 scripts, examination scripts. It nearly killed me. He gave me hernia. And I vowed never again, I would do the teaching, but not marking so many scripts, too many. And all were not from the Faculty of Law. There were people from other faculties who had law as one of the options. But to look up from the lectern and see 258 people sitting in tears, it was quite daunting. Anyhow, we got through it well, and they gave me high marks for my teaching.
Of course, we expected nothing less. And we also give you high marks for this series, sir. Do join us next week at the same time as Sir David begins his wrap-up of this autobiographical journey. Sir David Simmons, his life in focus. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Thanks for staying with us.